Hey there. Tonight we slip into a smoke-filled cottage at the edge of a village you've never seen on a map. The fire has burned low, just faint embers glowing beneath soot-blackened logs, and the night presses against the wooden walls like a secret. You're lying curled up near the hearth, though the fever coursing through you feels more like a slow, patient fire of its own. Your wool dress is soaked in sweat, sticking to your skin like moss on stone, and your hands tremble when they try to push away the blanket, too heavy, too rough, too much. Your mother kneels beside you. Her hands are steady, but her eyes keep flicking toward the door. She's muttering to herself prayers braided with plans, and beside her sits a worn leather bag filled with the tools of medieval healing vials of dubious liquid iron hooks, cloths stained darker than the night. The physician is coming. You're not sure what hour it is. Maybe midnight, maybe before. In the corner of the room, your sister lights another candle with hands that shake slightly, and shadows leap like frightened deer across the low ceiling. An owl hoots outside. The wind sighs. You do not. Every breath you take feels too loud, too fragile. This is what it means to be ill in a time when illness has no name. You're not diagnosed. You're judged by your sweat, by your color, by the way your body trembles. Your family whispers about heat in the blood bile gone wrong, and the priest said it might be punishment for what no one dares to guess. You remember your friend Anis. She had a cough and a chill last spring. The doctor gave her a potion that smelled like rust and rosemary, then opened a vein. She never woke up after that. Someone said it was because she bled under the wrong stars. Someone else blamed demons. Either way, she's buried in the chapel yard now, and her grave is the only one without flowers. You hear hooves crunching frost outside. The physician has arrived. He steps into the cottage like a shadow with a heartbeat tall, and cloaked his hair oily and his boots still muddy from the road. He nods once to your mother, never even glancing at you yet, and begins to unpack his bag. There's a vial that glows faintly green, a long iron tool, and something wrapped in cloth that clinks ominously. You try not to look. He mutters in Latin under his breath. Your mother offers him coins wrapped in linen. He takes them, sniffs the air, and then finally leans close to inspect you. His hands are cold. His breath is sour. His fingers press into your throat and chest, searching for signs only he knows. Then he pulls back and announces in a tone both tired and certain that your humors are unbalanced. There is too much heat, he says. Too much wetness. Or maybe not enough. He doesn't sound sure anymore. But what is certain, he tells your mother, is that you must be bled. And suddenly, the room tilts. Your mother nods solemnly. Your sister bites her lip. You want to scream, but your throat is sand and your limbs are pudding. You don't want the knife. You don't want the leeches. You want the midwife from the next village over the one who smelled like peppermint and nettle, whose hands never trembled. But she's gone now. Branded a witch. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is where you are. I love seeing the sleepy little constellation we make across the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. The physician reaches into his bag. The fire flickers against the blade. Your mother crosses herself. You wish you were anywhere else, even the graveyard. Maybe especially the graveyard. There's no anesthesia, no disinfectant. Just courage you don't have, and a system that thinks your blood is to blame. He presses your arm against a worn wooden board. You bite down on a scrap of cloth. The cut is fast, but the pain blooms like wildfire. You feel the blood pour out, and hope desperately it's not your soul leaving too. Historians still argue whether medieval doctors truly believed in the balance of humors or if it was simply the only language they had for suffering. What's clear is that suffering was real and yours has only just begun. Outside, the owl hoots again. It sounds oddly like laughter. You don't remember when the bleeding stopped. Maybe it never really did, not in your mind. The cloth wrapped around your arm is soaked and sticky, already turning brown at the edges. It itches and throbs like a warning, but no one seems worried. The physician calls it a good sign. He says your fever should ease now, that your blood was too hot, that the excess needed to be released. He speaks like he's drawing water from a barrel, not lifeblood, from a girl who hasn't seen 17 summers. And then because your fever doesn't dip right away, he asks for the leeches. You don't move. Not because you agree, but because your body can't. You're a stone beside the hearth, cracked but silent. Your eyes find your mother's, but she's already reaching for the jar. Glass, sealed with wax. Inside they writhe. You've seen leeches before near the pond at the edge of the village. Slimy little things that latched onto your ankles when you waded in too far. You used to scream and kick and cry until your father would pull them off with a stick. He called them nature's pickpockets. Now they are medicine. The physician hums slightly as he melts the wax as if he's opening a jar of jam. You look away, the flicker of firelight bouncing across the cottage wall, and every shadow suddenly seems shaped like a worm. The wind presses against the window pane, and an owl calls again from far off. It's the only sound that doesn't seem to betray you. The first leech lands on your skin with a wet plop. You try to will your arm to flinch, but it won't obey. You feel the creature's mouth find purchase, tiny jaws eager and ancient. A slow suck. Your stomach turns. The next one joins, and the next. Let them feed, the physician says almost kindly. Joke number 1. If leeches are medicine, you'd rather trust a witch's toad to lick you clean. And honestly, it would probably smell better. You think of Annis again. Not just the fever, but her voice sharp and funny. How she warned you once at the well, whispering that doctors guess more than they cure. You didn't listen then. You thought her strange, maybe jealous. But now you see the fear she wore like a second skin. The third leech slithers toward your collarbone. Your sister looks sick. She bites her lip until it bleeds. Her hand reaches out, then pulls back. She's just as trapped as you are. This isn't a choice, it's ritual. And rituals don't need permission. Historians still argue whether leeching ever actually helped, or if it simply prolonged suffering under the illusion of action. But here in this cottage under this roof, leeches mean hope. Or at least they mean doing something, and doing something always feels better than watching someone you love slowly fade. Even if that something is slimy, bloodthirsty, and oblivious to pain. The physician kneels beside you and peers at the leeches with a sort of reverence. They're swelling now, fat little monks at their feast. He nods satisfied. They've found the corruption, he says. You almost laugh. Almost. He tells your mother to wait until they fall off on their own and not to salt them, or the toxins might rush back into your body. Your mother nods solemnly. She believes him. She has to believe him. Because if this doesn't work, what else is there? You glance at the hearth where the fire's dying again. No one adds wood. The warmth of the flames feels like a memory now, pleasant, distant, and unreachable. Joke number 2. If leeches draw poison, you're hoping they take the doctor's ignorance too. You close your eyes, but sleep won't come. Not yet. Not with these creatures still feasting on you, still hanging from your arms like bloated fruit. You try to disappear into the straw mat beneath you, into the sound of your sister breathing into the candle, sputtering beside the bread box. You think of Father John, who once called suffering a divine trial. You think of your mother's face when he said it. You think of your friend Morda, who bled too much, who was told it would cleanse her humors, who whispered it still hurts until she couldn't whisper anymore. You think of the well again, of Agnes's warning, and you wait. Joke number 3. If leeches are healing, you'd rather be sick. You hear him before you see him. The physician. Latin still clinging to his lips like stale breath. His boots creak against the floorboards as he circles your straw mat, murmuring phrases not meant for you, phrases meant for the stars. He pulls a small brass disc from his bag crusted with the fingerprints of the last dozen patients who likely didn't make it. He calls it a star dial, but it looks like a lost button from a knight's coat. Circles within, circles lines etched like veins, constellations picked out in tiny scratches. He holds it up to the window, letting the moonlight strike it just so. He mutters again, Mars in ascension, Venus waning, you're too weak to ask what that means. But you can guess. It means something bad. It always means something bad. Joke number 1. If stars guide doctors, you'd rather they navigate you to a nap. Your mother watches him with something close to reverence. She doesn't understand it either, but the mystery comforts her. If the stars say it, it must be true. Your sister, still crouched beside you, doesn't buy it. Her brow furrows, her fingers twitch near yours. She leans close and whispers, Stars don't know you're sick. And in that moment, she becomes the smartest person in the room. In medieval Europe, astrology wasn't just for dreamers and poets. By the 13th century, it had crept into the bones of medicine. The position of planets determined when to cut, when to purge, when to administer potions, or worse, when not to. Bloodletting could be delayed for days until Mars said yes. A fever could be blamed on Saturn's mischief. Even childbirth might wait for the moon. Physicians carried star charts like farmers carried scythes. They claim precision, but all it gave you was delay. You remember hearing about old Maud, how her bleeding was timed to a full moon, how she trembled for days after her skin pale as linen until her breath thinned into silence. Your physician shifts the star dial again. Venus opposes your heat, he says, like it's obvious. We must purge. You don't even have the strength to groan anymore. Historians still argue whether medieval doctors truly believed in the stars, or if astrology was more for show a bit of celestial theatre to dazzle their desperate patients. But either way, the results were the same people treated by the sky, not by science. And the sky, as you're learning, has a cruel sense of humor. The physician drops a few dried herbs into a cup of hot water. Your next treatment. The tea smells like boiled grass and regret. You sip, because you're told to. Your sister watches every movement, lips pressed thin. Your mother clutches her rosary with one hand and your ankle with the other. Joke number 2. If the stars heal, you're hoping for a constellation shaped like a bandage. The room spins slightly, whether from fever or the tea you can't say. The candle burns low now, its wax trailing down like your hopes. You think about the market astrologer, the man with eyes too wide and fingers ink-stained from his own charts. He once told a noblewoman to delay her medicine for 3 days. She died on the 2nd. Mercury was retrograde, he had said, as if that explained everything. You remember Agnes laughing bitterly after hearing the tale. Mercury doesn't know your name, she'd muttered. But your physician is sure. This is the right moment, he says, looking out of the window. The moon is thin, a silver whisper. You imagine it laughing at you. He dips the brass dial into its pouch and pulls out a second vial. The liquid glows faintly green. Prepared under Saturn's gaze, he says, which somehow makes it worse. Your sister gently lifts your head, and you drink. You close your eyes. The world hums. The hearth's embers snap once like punctuation. The walls creak. Somewhere the owl calls again. Joke number 3. If astrology is medicine, you would rather trust a witch's crystal ball to save you. The physician prays in Latin. Your mother whispers her own words beside him. You try to find yourself beneath all of it, beneath the charts, the chants, the cures. But your body feels like borrowed cloth, your soul folded into a corner. You want someone to look you in the eye, to see you, not your humors, not your horoscope. but they're all staring at the stars. The stars have spoken, and they want you purged. Your physician, still clutching his moon-blessed dial like it's a sacred relic, has declared that Venus demands your fever be drawn out. The heat must be expelled, he says, as if your body is a furnace that needs a chimney sweep. You're too tired to argue, too hot to think, too aware that nothing about this night feels like healing. Your mother nods solemnly, though you can see her lips tremble. Your sister, still kneeling by your side, doesn't even hide her scowl anymore. She's not a pot of stew, she mutters almost to herself, but loud enough. The physician ignores her. He begins preparing the tools for bloodletting. Again. You'd already been cut yesterday, just a small nick on your forearm, enough to dribble crimson into a cracked ceramic bowl. To balance your humors, he had said, as if your illness were a set of uneven scales. Now he says it must be done again because Venus is in retrograde or Mars is sulking, or whatever celestial squabble he's chasing this hour. Joke number 1. If moon phases decide your health, hope yours isn't a waning crescent. In the 13th century, humoral theory ruled the sickbed like a petty monarch. The idea was simple, too simple. 4 bodily fluids, blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile, each linked to a temperament, each to a season, an element, even a planet. And if you were ill, it wasn't because you'd caught something. It was because your humors were imbalanced. Too much heat, you had too much blood. Too cold, maybe an excess of phlegm. A cough. That's clearly the influence of Mars through the gallbladder. And for women, well, you were already too moist and too cold. Your entire body was seen as deviation from the male ideal. So any imbalance was treated with even more suspicion and more frequent cuts. You remember the story of old Maud. Not the bleeding, everyone remembers that. No, you remember the moon. Annis had told it at the well, her voice hushed. They waited for the full moon, said it would draw the poison. But it pulled more than that. She couldn't sit up the next day, couldn't speak, bled out near enough. You can still picture Annis's eyes wide haunted. Never trust a cure timed to the moon, she whispered. Joke number 2. If Venus demands a purge, tell her to take a bath instead. The physician presses a finger to your wrist. He's not checking your pulse, he's checking your alignment. Yes, the time is right, he says. You want to scream. Instead you wince as he dabs your skin with vinegar. He claims it cleanses, but it stings and the cloth looks reused. The blade comes next. It's small. Russ shadows the edge. You close your eyes and think about the stars. Not the ones on his chart, but the ones in the sky, distant, silent, uncaring. You imagine one blinking out. Just gone. Maybe that one was yours. Your mother prays faster. Your sister holds your hand so tightly it hurts. The physician slices. It burns. It weeps. You feel the warmth of your own blood dripping down again. This is the second cut in 2 days. You wonder how many more your body can give. Historians still argue whether bloodletting saved lives or simply gave doctors something to do when they didn't understand the cause of illness. Some records show temporary relief perhaps from the placebo of being treated, but more often patients were left pale, weak, and vulnerable to worse, especially women. You were more likely to be bled because, according to some scholars of the time, you were more unstable, more changeable. Like the moon itself, you think about that. How your body is always being compared to the sky. Too full, too empty. Too hot, too cold. Too this, too that. Never just enough. Joke number 3. If your humors are out of balance, maybe the doctor should start with his own. Your sister dabs your brow with a cloth. It's cool, kind, grounded. You wish the doctor would look at you the way she does. The bleeding stops. The physician nods, satisfied. He tucks the blade back into his bag beside the leech jar and the brass dial. Your mother leans in. The fever will break soon, love. But it doesn't. It climbs higher. You slump against the cottage wall, the wooden boards pressing into your spine. Smoke curls from the hearth. Outside, the owl hoots again like it's mocking you. The physician mutters something about the next phase of Venus. You wonder if you'll live to see it. The wind shifts outside your window. It's subtle at first, just a stirring of air carrying the scent of damp earth and something else. Something metallic. Faint. Distant. But the smell curls under the door like a warning. Then your mother stiffens. "He's coming," she whispers. Your sister looks up sharply, eyes wide. The room, already quiet, falls into a hush so deep you can hear the crackle of the hearth as if it were screaming. It's not the physician, not this time. It's someone worse. The plague doctor. Or at least that's the rumor now rippling through the village, that he's been summoned from the next parish. That your fever has begun to whisper the word no one dares say aloud. Pestilence. And with pestilence comes the beak. You've never seen one in person. Only stories. Descriptions from travellers, from that old market seller who passed through last winter and spoke of bird-masked men stalking through Florence. But everyone knows the shape. A long curved beak, glassy eyes, leather cloak. A silhouette that doesn't look human until it moves, and then you wish it hadn't. The doctor's bag still rests beside the door, but now it seems too small to contain what's coming. Too soft, too ordinary. The man inside that leather mask doesn't use poultices. He uses incense and flame. You draw the wool blanket closer, even though your fever's made your skin boil. You feel no warmth, just dread. Joke number one: if plague doctors cure anything, it's your hope. Historically, plague doctors rose to prominence during the Black Death in the 14th century, though their iconography would later cement in the centuries that followed. Their masks, with long beaks stuffed with herbs and flowers, were meant to filter bad air, the miasma believed to carry disease. But to most villagers, their appearance meant only one thing: death was near. The irony. Many plague doctors weren't trained physicians at all. Some were just civic volunteers, priests, or desperate men with strong stomachs and stronger boots. They were paid to witness, record, and occasionally prod with sticks. You think of that someone poking you with a rod, checking to see if you're still alive without ever touching your skin. It's hard to tell what's worse, the detachment or the incompetence. You shudder again. Not from fever this time. From the image of the mask. That bird's beak hovering over your face, eyes made of blackened glass reflecting only your own horror back at you. Your sister tightens her grip on your hand. "Don't let him near her," she whispers fiercely to your mother. But your mother is crying now. Quiet tears running down her cheeks. Her hands clasped in prayer. She's out of ideas. Your fever won't break. The leeches did nothing. The star dial has failed. And the village priest, Father John, hasn't arrived. There is one figure who always arrives. The beak. You think of Annis again. The well. Her cousin buried after 3 days of treatment that smelled of lavender and rotting apples. They said the plague doctor had cleansed the air around her bed. They burned rosemary, sage, and pitch. And still she died, eyes open, lips cracked. Joke number 2. If a plague mask helps you breathe, it's only because the air around you has burned away. Your vision blurs. The fever is relentless now. It pulses behind your eyes like a second heartbeat. You imagine the beaked doctor reaching for a candle, lighting a brazier, filling the air with smoke so thick it chokes your prayers. Historians still argue whether plague doctors were healers or simply bureaucrats in terrifying costumes meant to soothe a population that needed order more than answers. Some wore the mask as armor, some as theater, and some just to avoid the stench of death. You're not sure which is worse. The sound of footsteps outside jolts you. Boots, slow, deliberate. Your sister gasps. Your mother rushes to the door but doesn't open it. Instead, she crouches beside you. places her trembling hand on your forehead and begins to sing a lullaby, the one about the miller's daughter and the river. You haven't heard it since you were 6. You try to remember the words, but all you can think of is that mask. Joke number 3. If masks are medicine, maybe a witch's veil is just as good and far less terrifying. The knock comes, a single thud, then silence. You don't look, you can't. Your body curls tighter like the wool around you could somehow block out what's beyond the door. The fire pops, your skin slicks with sweat, your teeth chatter. The beaked silhouette waits, outside an owl hoots. A breeze sighs through the cracks in the cottage wall, and you feel like the air has already left your lungs. You don't remember the door opening, only the sudden change in the air. It smells now of vinegar and crushed thyme, sharp, almost sour, with a sweetness that shouldn't be there. The scent floats ahead of him like a warning, and when the silhouette enters the room, time fractures. Your mother rises slowly, kneeling now, as if in prayer. Your sister clutches your hand tighter. And you can't move. The figure steps into view, cloaked in layers of dark leather seams, stitched thick like scars. On his face, the mask pale and bird-like, the beak arcing out into the smoky room, twin glass eyes catching the firelight and reflecting nothing back. He is less man than omen. No one speaks, no one breathes. Then from under the cloak, he produces something long and slender. Not a blade, not a lancet, but a wand tipped with herbs, maybe mint, maybe sage, all browned with old use. He raises it slowly and points toward you as if to confirm you're the patient or to count your days. Joke number 1. If plague doctors were meant to heal, maybe they wouldn't have looked like nightmares with walking sticks. The plague doctor approaches your cot and the scent grows stronger. Beneath the herbs is another smell, one you almost miss beneath the vinegar. Rot, not fresh but not old either. Decay that clings to fabric, to fingertips, to memories of the last patient he visited. You want to ask him to leave, but your lips won't move. The fever locks you in place, your body too heavy, your breath too shallow. The only thing you can do is listen as he speaks, not in a voice you expected, not commanding or monstrous, but dry and clinical, like someone reading from a page. He asks your mother how long the fevers lasted. She answers with a crack in her voice. He asks what remedies have been tried. She stammers leeches, star chart timing, bloodletting. He nods, slowly, then lifts the wand. He begins to circle your bed, muttering under his breath. Latin again, or something close. His wand taps the air as if swatting away unseen spirits or measuring your soul's readiness to leave. You think of the stories from market day, the girl who died choking on incense, her lungs full of smoke instead of air. They said the doctor never touched her, just lit herbs around her bed, made marks on parchment, and left. She died before morning. Historians still argue whether plague doctors were medical officers or spiritual ones hired more to symbolize protection than to actually provide it. Their presence brought order and fear and the illusion of action. You stare at the mask and wonder what he sees through those glass lenses. If he sees you at all, or just a fevered body, a statistic, a danger to others. He produces another object, now a pouch. Untying it slowly, he reveals a dark bowl of paste. Resin, probably. Crushed herbs thickened with honey. A charm. He places it on a cloth and lays it at the foot of your bed, whispering that it may purify the air. Your sister looks at you with silent panic. You remember Anis again, her sister treated just like this. Purifying herbs, charms, chants, and then her body cold by morning. Joke number 2. If plague doctors could banish sickness with incense, then chimney sweeps would be our finest healers. You close your eyes, not to sleep, but to shut him out. The soft scrape of his boots on the wood floor moves toward the door again. You hear your mother asking something in a low voice, whether you'll survive, whether it's the plague. He does not answer, only offers a murmured instruction: isolate, burn any cloth soaked in blood or sweat. He doesn't touch you, not once, just like the stories. As he leaves, his cloak stirs the air again, sending the scent of vinegar and herbs floating back through the cottage like a ghost of medicine. The door closes, and suddenly he's gone. The fire crackles. Your sister weeps. Your mother crosses herself 3 times, hands shaking. You open your eyes again, but the mask lingers in your mind, those blank, glassy eyes. Those herbs meant to cleanse, that wand meant to distance, that silence meant to substitute for comfort. You try to lift your hand, but it's too heavy. The fever is still here. So is the dread. You think about what just happened, how no real treatment was offered, how your pulse was never taken, your breath never measured, your body never touched, just herbs and prayers and a mass that felt like death. Joke number 3. If plague doctors are healers, then shadows must be surgeons. Outside, an owl calls again. A second voice answers. You wonder if they too are warning each other. The beak is here. Your mother stokes the fire. Your sister wrings out a rag and places it on your forehead. You are still sick, still burning. But now the fear is worse. Not of the fever, but of the fact that the man who was supposed to save you didn't even try. The scent of vinegar still lingers in the cottage air. It clings to the wooden beams like a ghost mingling with smoke from the hearth and the sour tang of sweat. You shift slightly on your straw-stuffed mattress, and every movement feels like a betrayal, your limbs heavy, your skin damp with fever, and your mind weighed down by the memory of the beaked doctor who never truly saw you. But the village doesn't stop. When the physician's treatments fail and the stars say the worst is yet to come, someone inevitably utters the name of the barber. Yes, the barber. The same man who cuts your father's hair on feast days, who once pulled a rotten tooth from your cousin using a hook and a prayer. He is not a doctor, not by any standard, but in medieval Europe, especially by the 13th century, he's what you get when there's no one else left. They call him a barber surgeon, though only one of those words feels remotely safe. You hear your mother whisper his name now, not with hope, but with the dull resignation of someone lighting a candle in a thunderstorm. If the physician can't fix you, perhaps the barber will. After all, he knows how to cut. And that apparently is enough. Joke number 1, if you need healing, and your options are a man with a beak or a man with a blade, maybe you're better off with a blanket and good luck. The barber's shop sits by the well, marked by a striped pole painted red and white, spinning lazily in the wind. They say the red stands for blood, and the white for bandages, or hope, or surrender. You've passed it dozens of times on market day, never imagining that you might be carried there one day on a door used as a stretcher. Your sister whispers stories, half remembered, half feared. Tales of the man who came in with a bruised knee and left missing a leg, of the woman whose abscessed tooth was yanked out so roughly it took part of her jaw with it, of the boy who had a fever like yours and was bled by the barber until his lips turned blue. But stories don't matter when the doctor's bag sits untouched in the corner and your mother's eyes begin to turn toward the door, waiting for another figure to appear. The barber arrives without ceremony. No cloak, no beak, no charm-scented wand. Just a leather apron stained with memory, a blade tied to his hip, and a bag of tools that look more suited for butchering pigs than healing people. He doesn't ask about your symptoms. He doesn't read the stars. He doesn't care what Venus is doing in the sky. He presses your arm with a rough thumb nods once and declares, "Too much blood. It needs out." You think of the blood that's already soaked your linens, the cloth your mother keeps changing, the redness that keeps seeping through, and now this man wants more. Historians still argue whether barber surgeons were misunderstood craftsmen or reckless opportunists. Some were respected for their skill in amputation or cauterizing wounds. Others were feared for doing more harm than healing, especially with no anesthesia, no training, and no concept of infection. The barber asks for hot water and cloth. Your sister hurries to fetch them. He lays out his tools, a blade that looks recently sharpened, its edge gleaming like ice, a pair of iron tongs, a thick leather strap, a vial of something dark, perhaps alcohol, perhaps oil. Your heart pounds. Your mother tells you to be brave. You want to scream, you want to beg, you want to leave, but the fever holds you hostage. So does the weight of your family's hope, and the fear that not letting him cut you might be worse than letting him try. Joke number 2. If the barber's pole spins fast enough, maybe it'll slice your fever in half. He binds your arm tight just above the elbow. The strap bites into your skin. He doesn't speak, only gestures for your mother to hold your shoulders, your sister to hold your legs. The blade hovers, and then it descends. It cuts, but not deep. A quick nick enough to open the skin to let the blood trickle, to see if this release will somehow balance your humors, lower your fever, save your soul. Pain blossoms, sharp, bright, impossible to ignore. You gasp. Not from the wound, but from the realization of how much it hurts to be alive right now. The blood begins to flow, and with it your strength. Your vision dims at the edges. Your sister is crying now silently, her hands still gripping your ankles. Your mother mutters prayers to saints you've never met. The barber watches the blood. Not you, just the blood, as if it alone tells the story of your survival. He waits, then wipes the blade clean on his apron. He doesn't speak to you, not a word of comfort, not even a nod. He collects his tools, takes the cloth, now soaked crimson, and stands. No instruction, no warning, no promise. He leaves. The door swings shut, and the cottage is quiet once more, save for the crackle of the hearth and the soft, steady sound of your own breathing, shallow, ragged, uncertain. You survived the barber, but you're not sure you survived the fear. Joke number 3. If barber surgeons are saviors, then butcher shops should be cathedrals. The firelight dances on the ceiling, your arm throbs, the fever hasn't broken, the bloodletting hasn't helped, and you wonder how many more men with tools must stand over your bed before you either recover or disappear. You're still lying there, fever slicked and drained. The cut on your arm has stopped bleeding, but the cloth wrapped around it clings like second skin, sticky and warm. You feel lightheaded, not from the fever now, but from what's been taken. The barber's blade might have been sharp, but his cure was dull as ever. The embers in the hearth have dimmed to a sleepy orange, and your sister curls beside you, as if by staying close she might guard you from what comes next. But the fear hasn't left. It only changes faces, and this time it wears no beak, no stars, no red striped pole. This time the terror comes on fingers, unwashed, calloused, crusted with old blood-soiled grease, perhaps even yesterday's sickness. You've begun to notice something in every man who claims to heal their hands. Not the incantations they mutter, not the relics they carry, not even the tools they wield, but their hands. They touch you, they prod, they pinch, they slice, but they never wash. And here lies a truth about medicine in medieval Europe. Hygiene was not yet a science, not even a suggestion. By the 13th century, ideas of cleanliness were more spiritual than sanitary. Dirt on the skin, a sign of humility, blood on the fingertips. Evidence of piety labor, or worse, just forgetfulness. No soap, no sterilization, no understanding that the very fingers that tested your pulse might also carry the death you're trying to escape. You stare at your own hands. They tremble in the faint glow of the hearth. You think of the physician, his nails black-rimmed, his palms dusted with herbs and ash, his lancet wiped on his robe between uses. You think of the barber, his knife gleaming, yes, but not from cleanliness, just from use. And then you think of that moment when one of them placed a damp cloth on your brow and you felt the grit of old skin the faint smell of decay beneath the scent of rosemary. Your fever isn't the only thing making your stomach churn. Historians still argue whether the lack of hygiene was due to ignorance or belief. Some say medieval physicians didn't know germs existed. Fair enough, bacteria wouldn't be discovered for centuries. Others argue they simply didn't care, placing tradition, ritual, and status above practical caution. But you're not here for the debate. You're here in this little cottage trying not to die. And all you can think about are the hands. Joke number 1, if cleanliness is next to godliness, then your village healers are running late to church. The midwife Agnes's sister once said that hands should be warmed before touching a patient, cleaned before touching a wound, blessed before cutting flesh. She uses herbs to cleanse. Boiled water, ash soap, even vinegar when she can get it. They call her fussy, old-fashioned, strange. You call her hope, because while others guess at your fate using stars or blades or writhing slugs, she at least starts by not infecting you more. You recall how she once stitched up a girl who fell on a nail. She sewed with calm precision, her hands scrubbed in hot water and covered with clean linen wraps. The girl lived. The scar is barely there. You wonder where Agnes's sister is now. You wish it was her kneeling beside you instead of these ghosts in human skin. Your mother pours another bowl of water. She dips a cloth into it and places it on your forehead. It's lukewarm and smells like iron and rosemary. You open your eyes and meet hers. There's something breaking in them, like glass trying to hold back an ocean. She asks if you're all right. You don't answer. Not because you don't want to, but because the lump in your throat is made of dread. Joke number 2. If a doctor's hands could speak, you want them to apologize. You drift again. The fever returns in waves, now less like a fire, more like a tide. Sometimes it pulls back and lets you breathe. Sometimes it crashes over your chest and pins you to the mattress. And each time it does, you think about the touch that brought it closer. You remember the leech jar, slimy glass between unclean palms. You remember the star amulet, the same one that tapped against your bare arm while the doctor explained Venus's position as if she'd written you a death sentence. You remember the barber, his thumb pressing hard on your wrist to find your pulse, his hand still damp from someone else's blood. And you remember the stories of women who died not from disease but from care, or rather from careless care. You whisper a joke in your mind. If death is a person, maybe it's not wearing a black cloak. Maybe it's just wearing dirty gloves. Your sister wipes your forehead. Her hands are clean. You notice, and you sigh. A quiet, shaky, grateful sigh. The cottage is hushed again. Just the crackle of wood, the occasional owl, and your own heartbeat uneven but still yours. Your mother is praying now. She mutters Saint Bridget's name, then Saint Apollonia, then Saint Sebastian, as if stringing saints together might form a barrier against what's coming. You don't stop her. Let her hope. Let her light candles. But you close your eyes and imagine vinegar-soaked hands. Clean ones, kind ones, ones that ask before they touch. Joke number 3. If the physician's fingers were any dirtier, they'd be growing crops. You laugh. A little. It hurts. But it's a laugh all the same. You hold on to it. Because it's yours. And because it's cleaner than anything else you've been given tonight. The night stretches on soft and slow like old cloth unraveling. You don't know what time it is anymore. The fire has withered into coals, casting long, weak shadows across the beams. Your sister has dozed off, her head tipped against the wall like a wilted bloom. And your mother, she's still awake, whispering prayers like threads she's too afraid to let go of. You, though you're not praying, you're watching the door. Because there's one last figure who might walk through it. One final practitioner feared even more than plague masks, lancets, and leeches. The priest. And if he comes, it means you might not rise again. In medieval Europe, particularly by the 14th century, the arrival of a priest to a sickbed signaled something very specific: the last rites. Also called extreme unction, it was a sacred ceremony for those believed to be near death. Holy oil, whispered Latin, confession, communion, absolution. To receive it was a comfort to the soul. But to witness it meant someone had already given up on your body. You've seen it before. When the candle was lit, when the door creaked open and Father John's soft sandals shuffled across the floorboards, when the family stood in silence, heads bowed, not from piety but from dread. Your neighbor's daughter Maris was barely 12. The oil was still warm on her brow when she passed. Joke number 1, if the priest shows up, you probably won't. So now you lie there listening for that sound. The scrape of the chapel door, the rustle of robes, the soft breath of incense clinging to a man who rarely touches the sick, only the dying. Your mother startles when the wind rattles the window shutter. Her hand moves instinctively to her cross. She doesn't say it, but you know what she's thinking. Should she send for him? Is it time? It's a decision, wrapped in love and grief, fear and duty. Because calling the priest too soon feels like giving up. But calling too late, well, you wouldn't be around to mind. Historians still argue whether the psychological comfort of last rites outweighed the fear it evoked. Some claim it gave medieval families a sense of closure, a ritualized farewell. Others point out how often it became a premature surrender, especially for women whose illnesses were often misjudged, whose strength underestimated. You don't want to be anyone's ritual, not yet. But you understand why they do it, why your mother's eyes keep flicking toward the doorway like it might open by itself. You think of the ritual itself. First, the holy water sprinkled over your bed as if to wash away the filth that suffering invites. Then the oils pressed gently on your forehead, your hands, your lips, your chest. Then the words, so many words, Latin phrases about peace and mercy and grace, and all of them feel heavy in the air like snow that won't melt. Your fevered brain pictures it too clearly, you lying still, the priest leaning in. Your mother crying quietly, holding your hand as if it will slip away otherwise. You shudder, not because of the chill, but because of how easy it would be to surrender, to let the ritual wash over you, to rest. Joke number 2, if you're still breathing but the priest arrives, hold your breath and pretend you're not ready yet. There's a deeper fear here too. Because in a world where medicine is uncertain and healing feels like a gamble, death becomes a kind of order, a system, a ritual everyone understands. And maybe that's why they cling to it, why they reach for it when they no longer trust the barber or the doctor or the stars. Because at least the priest follows a script. But you're not ready for that final scene. You want to rewrite it. You want to stay up just long enough to feel your body cool, your breath, even your strength return. You want to survive this. So you whisper the only thing you can. I'm not done. Your mother jerks her head towards you, eyes wide. She leans in, brushing hair from your face. What love. But you don't say it again. It's not for her, it's for yourself. Your sister stirs beside you and murmurs something in her sleep. Maybe a name, maybe yours. You reach for her hand, your fingers are still warm, still yours. And it feels like enough for now. Outside the wind has softened. The owl is silent. The village sleeps. But you're still fighting. And as you close your eyes again, you picture the priest arriving and turning back around. Joke number 3. If your priest arrives too early, tell him you're out to lunch and then beat the fever just to spite him. The hearth flickers again. Your mother pulls your blanket higher. The night is not won yet. You wake to the clink of coins. Not the gentle rattle of a few copper pennies in your father's hand, nor the metallic jingle of buttons at the market. No, this sound is heavier, purposeful, coins being counted, perhaps even parted with. Your mother's back is to you, hunched near the hearth. She's whispering to Father John, who must have come while you slept. A tiny leather pouch sits between them. You recognize it immediately. It once held your sister's wedding dowry sewn shut with lavender thread. And now, she's untying it. In medieval Europe, illness didn't just test the body, it tested the purse. Physicians, barbers, even the priests, they all came at a price. Healing like sin was rarely free. And for women especially, sickness was often a quiet exchange, life for coins, dignity for faith, one piece of cloth or livestock for one more night alive. You close your eyes, pretending sleep again. Not because you want to, but because you can't bear to watch your mother do what thousands of other women have done before her cell hoped to buy time. There's a low murmur between them, her voice urgent, his calm. You hear words like ointment, herbs, second visit, then a pause, then the soft sob she doesn't mean for you to hear. She's just sold the cow, not a great cow, a scrawny one prone to kicking the milk bucket. But it was still milk, still barter, still something, and now it's gone. Historians still argue whether medieval healthcare was exploitative by design or simply the best one could manage in a system where every profession, even holy ones, needed coin to survive. Some records suggest the poorest were treated freely. Others show priests demanding payment before administering rites. You suspect the truth, as always, lives somewhere in between. Your mother returns to your side, wiping her eyes with her apron. She smiles, but it's thinner than usual. It's handled, she says. And you want to ask what's been handled? The payment. The visit. The idea that if this doesn't work, at least she tried. Instead you nod, because you know. She sits beside you and wrings a cloth into a basin. The water smells like rosemary and pennyroyal. Expensive herbs. You know now where the money went. You glance around the cottage, quietly subtracting what's left: one blanket, one candle stub, half a loaf of bread, and the sick girl on the straw bed surrounded by the prayers of people who've given everything just to keep her warm. Joke number 1 in the Middle Ages: if you get sick, make sure your goat has savings. Outside, the wind has picked up again. You hear it whistle between the planks of the wall. A dog barks in the distance, sharp and desperate the way dogs get when they smell something unnatural on the air. Your sister sits nearby, nibbling the edge of her sleeve. She won't look at you, not directly. She's counting in her head, maybe. Trying to remember how much bread is left, or how many days it's been. She's too young for this. But then weren't you? The rosemary cloth is placed on your forehead. Warm, wet, soothing. You feel your mother's hand on yours. It's trembling, not with grief. Not yet. But with calculation. Because illness in this time is as much math as medicine. How much food left? How many days until the fair? How many coins for another visit? And is it better to buy honey and hope instead you remember your neighbor again? Maris, the one who died after the priest's visit. Her mother tried to raise money for medicine by selling lace at the market. When no one bought, she tried apples. When that failed, she tried tears. They were just as cheap. Joke number 2. If you're poor in the Middle Ages, you better hope your fever doesn't show up during a bad harvest. Your mother leans in, brushing hair from your brow. You're strong, she whispers, as if saying it might make it so. You'll be better by dawn. But dawn is hours away, and you know what fear sounds like when it dresses up as faith. The rosemary cloth is growing cold. Your skin is hot again. The fever surges quietly as if offended by the herbs. You try to hold still. You try to believe. But there's a heaviness in the room now, a quiet tolling bell of the mind. What if it doesn't break? What if all of this, the coins, the cloth, the whispered prayers, wasn't enough? You can't help but wonder how many women have lain just like this too, afraid to die but too expensive to save, Your breath catches in your throat. It's not just the priest or the barber or the stars that threaten you. It's the numbers, the cost of sickness, the arithmetic of desperation, the quiet calculation. How long can you afford to live? Joke number 3 in the medieval medical system, your pulse matters slightly less than your purse. The wind howls now. The fire flickers low. Your sister finally speaks. "I can sell my hair," she says softly, not looking at your mother. Silence. Then your mother's gentle voice, "No." But the idea lingers in the room like incense, because they both know. There may come a point where hair is worth more than hope. You close your eyes, not to sleep, but to hide the tears pressing behind them. The cloth on your forehead is warm again. She's reheated the water. That's something. And the pouch by the hearth. It's empty now, but someone's still fighting for you. That at least is priceless. The fire has dwindled again. Ash curls at its edges like the hem of an old dress singed and grey. A single coal pulses in the hearth, red and stubborn, refusing to die just yet. Much like you. You lie still, swaddled in the scent of rosemary steam and sweat-drenched linen ears tuned to every creak and whisper of the cottage. Your mother is asleep in the chair now, finally, her hands folded like parchment, her chin tucked into her chest. Even in rest, she clutches her rosary like a lifeline. Your sister remains awake, though. You feel her nearby, the small shift of her weight on the floorboards, the occasional sniffle. She hums softly now and then, not a song but a note somewhere between lullaby and prayer. You breathe carefully. Fever still clings to your ribs, but there's a new ache this time, lower, sharper. That's new. A chill trickles down your back despite the fever. Then footsteps. Not your father's heavy tread. Not your neighbor's. This step is slow, crisp, purposeful. Boots. Someone approaches the door. You see your sister flinch. She hurries to your mother, shakes her gently. A moment later, your mother is on her feet, smoothing her hair and apron, whispering a half prayer. As the knock comes, 3 soft raps. She opens it just a crack. And there he stands. A man in long robes, dark and wet at the hem from the road. A small satchel slung over one shoulder. His eyes are shadowed beneath a hood, and he carries a lantern whose glow seems to stretch farther than it should. You don't recognize him, but your mother nods as if expecting him. He steps in. His name is never spoken. He doesn't offer credentials, but his movements are practiced careful. His voice is low, smooth as smoke. He asks about symptoms. He observes you silently for several moments, then places his fingers clean, mercifully clean on your wrist. His touch is cool, and that's when you notice the badge. Not on his chest, but tucked into the satchel's leather flap. A 6-pointed symbol, the mark of a Jewish healer. In medieval Europe, particularly in urban centers, Jewish communities often preserved and passed down advanced medical knowledge rooted in Greek, Roman, Arabic, and Jewish traditions. Despite systemic persecution, many Jewish physicians were respected for their skill, even secretly sought after by Christian families during times of illness. You blink at him, unsure what to think. Your fevered mind reels. You've heard the sermons, the suspicions, and yet here he is in your cottage, while others are praying for a miracle from men who smell like goat and guess at stars. He listens to your chest, gently presses your abdomen, looks at your eyes. He doesn't mention Venus, or demons, or the moon. He asks if the pain began after the last bloodletting. Your mother nods. He frowns slightly, and then he opens his satchel. Not leeches, not knives, but cloth, small jars, a packet of dried herbs with Hebrew letters written across the twine. You expect fire and brimstone, instead you smell thyme and fennel, and something bitter but clean. Historians still argue whether Jewish physicians were more advanced or merely less burdened by church dogma. Some point to their access to translated Arabic medical text, while others note that their exile from many universities forced them into more practical, empirical approaches. Either way, his methods feel different. He doesn't try to scare you into faith. He doesn't speak in riddles or metaphors. He mixes herbs with warm water, has your sister help you sit up, and places the cup to your lips. It's foul, but not terrifying. He checks your pulse again, listens, watches, then hands your mother a folded parchment. Steep this if the fever worsens, he says. Your mother nods silent with both gratitude and fear. This is still illegal in many places, still punishable, but illness makes radicals of us all. He lingers only a moment longer, looks at your face once more. You're strong, he says, repeating your mother's earlier words, but this time it doesn't sound like a plea. It sounds like a prognosis. Then he's gone. A gust of wind follows him, scattering ashes in the hearth. Your sister hurries to close the door, and for the first time all day, the cottage is quiet. In a different way. Not the fearful hush of dread, but the gentle stillness of possibility. Joke number 1 in the Middle Ages. If you're lucky, salvation knocks quietly at night wearing robes no priest would dare bless. Your mother refolds the parchment twice, presses it to her lips, then hides it in the hollow under the floorboard where secrets and hope are kept. She returns to your side, touches your cheek. The fever hasn't broken yet, but it's shifted. The ache in your belly has dulled. You lean into the straw pillow. Your sister exhales for the first time in what feels like hours. Outside, the wind softens. The dog has stopped barking. You feel something you haven't felt since yesterday, maybe even longer. Possibility. Joke number 2. The best medicine isn't always sanctioned, but it is sometimes shared. The fire sighs in the hearth. Your mother adds a small log, just enough to warm the water again, not enough to waste. She hums now, a soft lullaby. Your sister joins barely above a whisper, and the cottage for a moment becomes sacred. Not because of the cross, not because of the Latin, but because someone came with healing, not performance. You drift between fever and rest, between fear and faith, between the cough and the breath that follows it. And in that soft in-between you begin to dream of a world where healers don't need permission, where medicine isn't a gamble between knives and stars, where being poor doesn't mean you die quieter, just sooner. Joke number 3. Sometimes the right medicine comes from the wrong book. You sleep now not out of surrender, but because finally rest feels earned. The morning comes slowly, not in rays of sun through clean glass, but through smoke and the milky blur of a cottage window warped with age. The fire has burned low again, just a hush of warmth curling beneath the ashes. Your mother sits beside you, her hand on your forehead. It lingers there for a moment longer than usual, as if surprised. You're cooler, only a little, but it's something. She doesn't say anything, just exhales a long breath that might be relief or might be prayer. Your sister is still asleep, curled at your feet, like a dog would be head resting against a straw mattress. Her braid has come undone. She looks like a child again. And you feel hollow, not healed, but different. Your limbs still ache, your stomach still knots now and then, and your throat still protests every swallow. But you feel something else now too. You are not worse. And in medieval medicine, not worse is sometimes as close to victory as it gets. There's no cheering, no sudden clarity, no physician returning with a triumphant grin and a patent pending. Just a mother who doesn't cry when she checks your pulse, just a sister who finally sleeps, just a fire that no longer spits but simmers. Outside the village stirs, someone's chopping wood. A rooster crows, you hear hooves on the packed dirt path and a shout from the field. Life continues. And for the first time in days, you wonder if you might be part of that continuation. Your mother steps outside to draw water. The air that creeps in behind her smells of morning grass and damp earth. You can almost taste it. She returns with a small wooden pail, washes your face gently with a rag. And that's when you remember it. The parchment. She kept it tucked in the hollow under the hearth, the one where other precious things are hidden. Dried lavender, your father's coin, the letter he never sent. The healer's note. She retrieves it now, not to read, but to show you. There's a careful reverence in her fingers as she unfolds it. On it drawn in tight, clear script, not Latin, but something older angled and beautiful, are instructions. Doses, names of herbs, and a diagram of sorts showing how to prepare an infusion for fever that clings past dawn. You squint at it, barely understanding. But your mother does. She reads it like scripture. Boil no more than a pinch of yarrow with chamomile and honey. Strain before the moon rises. And then softly he wrote it for women. See, she points to a mark barely visible beside the text. A small glyph. A symbol you've seen before in market stalls. Midwives use it to mark their tinctures for womb and blood. It was no accident. He knew who he was treating. In medieval medicine, women were often afterthoughts. Theories of the time leaned heavily on Galen's ancient notion of the wandering womb, claiming that illness in women stemmed from emotional excess or spiritual imbalance. Treatments focused on containment, bleeding, purging prayers, not healing. But the Jewish physician who came in the night brought something else entirely. He treated your body as a body, not a mystery, not a symbol of sin. Historians still argue whether women in medieval Europe had better luck with midwives than with formally trained doctors. Many suggest that midwives who actually listened to symptoms and observed patterns provided safer and more effective care than men who quoted Aristotle while spilling blood. You remember the look in your mother's eyes as he left the way. Her hands trembled when she touched the vial, not in fear, but in awe. You drink the infusion. It's warm and bitter, but it sits gently in your stomach, unlike the physician's last attempt. You don't shiver after. You don't feel the need to pray, not to vomit. You just lie there, waiting. And somewhere between the shadows of the ceiling beams you drift again, not into fever, into rest. Joke number 1. If medieval medicine had Yelp reviews, midwives would have 5 stars, doctors too, and that's being generous. The rest of the day blurs. People come and go outside, but your family stays in the cottage, the air thick with worry and cautious hope. A knock comes in the afternoon. This time it's Father John. He wears his usual cassock, the fabric patched at the elbows. He looks tired, like he's carried too many last rites lately. He enters, asks how you are. Your mother hesitates, then says, better. His eyebrows rise. Was it the leeches? He asks. Your mother says nothing, or the bloodletting, he continues. Still silence. Then softly, we prayed. And that is enough. He nods. You meet his eyes just briefly. And for a flicker of a second, you both know the truth. It wasn't the prayers. Not this time. He gives his blessing and departs, never once mentioning the healer. Whether he knows or not, you'll never know. But he does not ask, and you suspect that perhaps even he is grateful. Joke number 2. When the church asks what saved you, just say faith and let everyone sleep easier. Night falls again. The fever flirts with your pulse, but does not take you. You sit up, eat broth, speak softly. The pain in your belly subsides, and your mother weeps, but not from fear this time. Your sister braids your hair again, muttering how you look less like a ghost. The fire crackles, a log splits with a hiss. Outside, owls call from the trees, and the wind ever gentle threads through the shutters like a lullaby. The healer does not return. But he doesn't need to. He did enough. Joke number 3. The best medieval doctor is the one who never had to come back. And so you sleep again. Cooler now. Still sore but alive. The fire watches over you like an old friend. And in your dreams, there are no knives, no masks, no stars that threaten to kill you. Only herbs. And parchment. And the quiet, steady promise of hands that knew how to help. The next morning is quieter. Not because the world outside has changed, it's still damp. Still grey, still filled with the same rustling chickens, creaking carts, and distant toll of bells. But something inside the cottage feels lighter. Your fever has broken. It didn't fall away with the drama of a single sigh or a miraculous moment. It simply faded like mist when the sun rises, leaving behind a bone-deep tiredness and the vague sensation of returning from some distant war. You sit up fully now, propped against a bundle of straw and wool. Your mother brings you bread, coarse and dry, but welcome. It doesn't turn your stomach this time. Your sister laughs for the first time in days. It's a small sound, like a sparrow chirping from the roof beam, but it fills the whole room. And you, still aching, still trembling, find yourself smiling too. Because in this world where medicine is leeches and stars, where physicians clutch knives and plague masks, and your body is more mystery than miracle, a day without fever is worth more than gold. Outside the village is waking with midsummer. There's talk of a procession, something to do with St. Mary. Garlands are being woven. A donkey is being scrubbed for a child to ride. Somewhere a drum is being tuned. And you wonder almost with disbelief whether you might live long enough to join the crowd by week's end. But just as your thoughts drift toward flower crowns and music, your mother brings something new. A visitor. Not the priest. Not the barber. Not even the physician. A woman. Tall, dark, cloak eyes, sharp as gooseberries. She smells faintly of mint and ash. You know her. She's not from your village, but she's been whispered about at the market. A midwife. An herbalist. A woman who makes her own ink and tinctures. Some say she studied with nuns in a distant priory. Others say she speaks to trees. Her name is Mira. She smiles at you gently, doesn't ask permission, just pulls up a stool and takes your hand. Her fingers are rough, warm, assured. She examines the place where the lancet cut you, sniffs your breath, checks your tongue, and nods. You're not better yet, she says, but you're winning. Then she hands your mother a pouch. You'll need this, she says. To keep her well, it smells of yarrow and elderflower. You recognize the smell now. It's what was in the parchment recipe. So it was her. She was the one the healer learned from. Or perhaps she's the healer under a different guise. Historians still argue whether female healers in medieval Europe were midwives, mystics, or underground scientists. Some were literate, many were not. Some operated with church blessing, others were hunted as witches when their cure succeeded too well. You wonder which Mira is. But then she leans in and says, don't trust a man who treats stars better than patients, and you decide you trust her completely. She checks the cloth on your arm, replaces it with something cleaner, something soaked in honey and herbs. The sting is almost sweet. She doesn't stay long. No sermon, no astrology, no knives, just a soft press of your hand and the promise that she'll return if needed. Then she's gone. Your sister watches her walk away through the window. She doesn't look like a witch, she says. She looks like she knows things, you reply. Your mother is already boiling water for the herbs. There's energy in her movements now, not just desperation. You think of how long she's had to carry your illness alone, through prayers and physicians and all their poisons, and now she has tools, and you have breath. Joke number 1, if witches could save you, maybe the priests were just jealous they couldn't. The rest of the day slips by gently. You sleep again, this time without sweat. You eat more soup this time with actual carrot. You watch your sister brush out her braid and talk to the cat like it's a scholar. Life is creeping back in. and with it, stories. The neighbor visits old Hilda with her tales of a girl downriver who healed without a doctor, just herbs and time and moonlight. Then the blacksmith's wife who insists your survival was due to the special charm she tucked under your thatch, though no one asked her to. Then the boy from the mill who says he saw the healer slip through the woods weeks ago dressed like a monk, but carrying a fox on his shoulder. Everyone wants a piece of your recovery. Because in a village where medicine usually ends in graves, a girl who survives is a miracle. Your mother lets them talk. You just smile and sip your tea, but privately you remember the healer, and the parchment, and Mira. You remember the fear that filled every inch of your body as the physician unpacked his knives, the dread that came with the leeches, the horror of blood poles and plague masks and hands that never washed, and you wonder how many women didn't survive because they were too afraid to say no, because they were told pain was healing, because the stars said so. Joke number 2, in medieval Europe the best cure might have been a loud no thank you. Night returns, the fire is warm again. Not fever warm, just enough to glow. Your mother sits near it knitting, your sister is humming, and you're watching the flicker of flames and realizing something has changed. Not just your body, but your mind, because you know more now about what to fear and what to question and what to ask for. You're not out of danger, not fully, but you're no longer drowning, and that matters. Joke number 3. Sometimes surviving medieval medicine isn't just luck, it's stubbornness with a side of yarrow. The moon rises, you lie down. Your body creaks, but it's yours again. You listen to the wind, outside the soft clatter of pots, your sisters, breathing the hush of firelight. And for the first time in nights you drift to sleep, not wondering if you'll wake, but quietly trusting that you will. The next morning brings a rare gift, hunger. Not dread, not chills, not prayers mumbled through clenched teeth, but the simple primal growl of an empty stomach. A sign that your body has chosen to stay. A small rebellion against the graves dug too early in nearby fields. Your mother notices before you speak. She places a warm bowl in your lap before you can ask. Barley porridge with honey. You eat it slowly, not because you're cautious, but because you're savoring. Each spoonful is a declaration. I am here. I am alive. Outside the village stirs. The plague talk has quieted for now. No new cases, says the baker's apprentice. Father John's sermon is less about divine punishment and more about gratitude. Even the chickens seem less frantic. Your sister braids your hair. You let her. It feels normal. That's the strangest thing of all. And yet even now, a shadow lingers less in your body than in your thoughts. You remember it all too clearly, the night your fever peaked, the wheezing in your chest, the clink of metal tools, your mother's tremble, the way the physician muttered about Venus and vomit like it was gospel. You remember the heat of your skin as leeches writhed near the sting of bloodletting the silence, when the priest stepped in, but offered no comfort, only rules. And above all, you remember the feeling of being forgotten, or rather not seen. Because no one really asked what you felt. They treated your body like a battlefield, not a home. Historians still argue whether medieval women were truly silenced by medicine or if their stories simply went unwritten. But as you wrap your cloak around your shoulders and peer out at the world, you know one thing: your story was nearly erased. And it's far from over. You walk to the well today, on your own. It isn't far, but every step feels like a parade. The path crunches underfoot. The wind tousles your hair. You greet the sheep. They blink unimpressed. You're fine with that. At the well, Agnes is there. Of course she is. She raises her brow when she sees you. Well, she says. Well, you say back. Then you both laugh. Not a big laugh, not belly deep, but wide enough to fit relief. You lean against the stones. Thank you, you say. She shrugs. Wasn't me. I just warned you. You were the first to see me, you correct. Agnes nods, then pulls a small pouch from her apron. More of Mira's herbs, she says, for the next girl, and you take it. Not just because you believe in them now, but because you know someone will need them. The village is full of mothers and sisters and daughters who'll someday burn with the same fever. And they deserve more than blades, stars, and beaked masks. Joke number 1, if women ran medicine, leeches would be banned and herbal tea would be mandatory. On the way home, you notice the barbershop pole has been cleaned, fresh red and white, stripes sharper than memory. But now you see it differently. Not just as a warning, but as a relic. A relic of a time when cure meant cut and pain was proof of effort. You pass the church too. Father John nods at you from the steps. His eyes linger, perhaps in guilt, perhaps in awe. He doesn't speak. That's fine. You've learned the power of silence, of watching, listening. Back at home, your mother is tending to her own bruises, not physical ones, but the invisible weight of fear. She touches your forehead without thinking, then laughs when she realizes it's cool. You both laugh, not from joy, from exhaustion, from everything not said during the long nights by the hearth. Joke number 2. If laughter really is the best medicine, medieval Europe should have bottled it sooner. That evening, you write something. Just a small page. You ask Mira for parchment. She sends a scrap with lavender pressed into the fibers. You don't know Latin. You don't know astrology. You know pain, and how it tasted. And that's enough. You write, I was sick. They brought knives. I lived. Because I waited and listened, and someone saw me. That's all. You roll it gently, tuck it in the healer's pouch, and hand it to Agnes with instructions, pass it on. Someone will understand. Maybe not today. Maybe not even this year. But one girl someday will read those words and know that her voice matters even if no doctor ever asks to hear it. The stars begin to appear, not as omens, as lights. You sit by the fire once more, not curled in pain, but upright stronger. The hearth hums beneath your feet. Your sister brings in a bundle of mint and hangs it to dry. Your mother hums a song you haven't heard since before the fever. You sip your tea. The same herbs that once tasted bitter now taste like safety and peace and choice. You think of Mira again, of how she never told you what to do, only showed you what could be done. That's power, not control, but permission. The kind the stars never gave. The kind no knife ever offered. The kind that says, this body is yours. What? Will you choose joke number 3? If recovery were a potion, it'd be brewed from stubbornness, tears, and maybe a little mint. The moon climbs higher. The fire dims. And you smile at your sister as she curls beside you. You're not afraid of the dark anymore. You've already faced the worst it had. And you walked back. The days pass quietly now. Not without ache or memory, but with something steadier like soil after a storm. Each morning, you wake without dread. That alone feels like a miracle. You walk to the well, alone, again. Sometimes with a small list of herbs Mira recommends, sometimes just to feel the air. The wind no longer tastes of death, but of earth and sheep and dawn. The physician hasn't returned, not since the fever broke. Not since your mother politely declined his second purge. Rumor has it he's treating a nobleman 2 villages over. Maybe he's found someone who believes in the stars a bit more than you did. The barber's blood pole still spins, but now you notice that fewer people go in. Word spreads, you see, and women whisper. Around wells over laundry between bread and firewood. Your story has become something of a tale. The girl who said no, the one who hid the leeches, the fever that broke without a blade. They say it with a mix of amusement and awe. You pretend to shrug it off, but it lingers like a medal tucked beneath your shawl. You see Father John one morning. He stops, squints at you in the light, then says, "I suppose prayers work in mysterious ways." You don't answer. You just smile. A small, quiet rebellion. Later you return to the hearth, where so much happened, where you first trembled, where the leeches were nearly summoned, where you thought the plague doctor would arrive. Now it's just a hearth again, warm, humming. You sit beside it, not out of fear, but habit, comfort. Your sister is mending socks. Your mother slices carrots for stew. The fire crackles, not menacing, but welcoming. Historians still argue whether medieval households centered around the hearth for warmth, ritual, or necessity. You'd argue it was all three. But mostly it was where stories were made, and remembered. You pull a bit of parchment from the shelf. Not the letter you wrote. That's gone now, passed on. This one's blank. You begin again. Not as warning, but as witness. This house was once full of fear. Now it holds laughter. My fever burned, but it left something behind clarity. Doctors came and went, but healing came from herbs, from women, from quiet. And then because you're still a little cheeky joke number 4, if all else fails tea, and a good midwife. Outside the owl calls again. But it doesn't sound ominous anymore. Just present, just part of the night. You press the parchment flat, smooth the edges. Your mother glances over. Another tale you nod, one that might help. She says nothing, just places another log on the fire. You remember Anis, Mira, Agnes, their warning, their quiet courage. You think about the women who bled because a star said so or because a barber couldn't aim. You think about those whose stories were never written, but yours is. Now. It isn't grand. It doesn't have knights or dragons. It has sweat, herbs, doubt, courage, a sister's trembling hand, a mother's breaking voice, and your own breath still here. You write, they feared death, I feared the cure. But I lived, because someone listened. The fire pops gently. You lean back, not sick, not afraid, just here, now. That night you sleep soundly, not because the world is safe, but because you are. Because the hands that once trembled now write, because the voice that once whispered now remembers. And because the body once treated like a battlefield has become something softer, wiser, yours. And maybe someone far in the future will read your words and feel less alone. Maybe they'll be lying in a soft bed far from herbs and hearths. Maybe they'll be struggling to sleep. Maybe they'll find your story and it will wrap around them like a quilt made of memory and strength. Maybe as they drift into dreams, they'll whisper, "She lived," and feel braver for it. And so as the fire fades and the stars wheel quietly above the thatched roof of a forgotten cottage, you rest. Not because everything is perfect, but because for tonight, everything is calm. You've walked through fever and fear, through leeches and lancets, through prayers and plague masks, and you've come out the other side not unscarred, but whole. The past may have been harsh, the cures crude, the trust misplaced, but here in this quiet closing breath of the tale, something softer remains. A girl, her hearth, her story, still glowing, still alive. So let that warmth wrap around you now. Breathe in the herb sweet air, hear the owl call far off, feel the weight of wool against your chest. You're safe, you are seen. And whatever aches or shadows follow you in waking life, they'll wait till morning. For now, let your mind float like steam above a mug of mint tea, curling and drifting through the stillness. Let go of the charts, the blades, the ancient fears. They're history now, and you're here, in this moment, quiet, held, and healing. Good night, dear traveler of time. Sleep well, dream gentle, and remember, sometimes the most radical thing we can do is simply rest.